On September 12, 2025, astronomers detected something that shattered every expectation they had about how the universe behaves. A colossal object, blazing in from the darkness of deep space, with a tail stretching across the sky 5 times the width of a full moon, so enormous that even amateur astronomers with backyard telescopes could see it. Within hours, it was confirmed. This was no ordinary comet. It was something far larger, far brighter, and far stranger than anything we have ever recorded. Officially catalogued as C2025R2, now simply called SWAN. But the timing is what truly froze scientists in disbelief, because another object, the already infamous 3I Atlas, was also inbound, racing toward the sun from the exact opposite direction of the sky. Both set to reach their closest approach to the sun within the same 10-day window, both hidden by the solar glare during their most critical moment, and both displaying anomalies that defy the laws of nature. The odds of such a cosmic double entry happening by chance are so vanishingly small that some scientists have stopped calling this coincidence and started whispering the word mission. If one interstellar object was strange enough, then the arrival of a second, 100 times larger, targeting the same solar corridor, suggests we may not be witnessing accidents of astronomy at all. We may be watching an operation. As data poured in, what first stood out about SWAN wasn't just its size, but its behavior. Unlike typical comets, which scatter light in predictable patterns, SWAN's reflective properties showed metallic signatures, hints of nickel and cobalt, the same materials we humans use to forge durable alloys and protect against corrosion. Some researchers began calling it the fortress, because while most comets break apart under the stress of the sun, this one seemed shielded, armored even, maintaining a brightness curve far beyond what natural ice and dust could explain. And its tail, already record-breaking in length, did not behave like chaotic vapor, but pulsed with subtle rhythmic changes, as if controlled microthrusts were guiding its motion. Imagine watching a skyscraper-sized tank drift through space, cloaked in a shimmering halo that might not just be gas, but an electromagnetic shield deflecting the fury of solar winds. That is the image scientists are now grappling with. But even more unsettling than its scale is its timing, because while SWAN looms as a fortress, its smaller counterpart 3I Atlas behaves like a drone, agile, erratic, with strange bursts of acceleration and tail color shifts that no natural process can fully explain. Together, they don't look like random visitors. They look like pieces of the same puzzle, 2 parts of a system converging on the sun at the same time, hidden from us during the very days when their true purpose might be revealed. When astronomers plot the arrival vectors of SWAN and Atlas on a star map, something extraordinary emerges. SWAN comes from Aquarius, Atlas from Sagittarius, 2 origins separated by more than a quarter of the entire celestial sphere. Yet despite their radically different approach angles, they both cross into the inner solar system at nearly the same solar distance, reaching perihelion within just 3 days of each other. Statistically, this kind of synchrony is impossible. Random comets scatter their arrivals across decades, sometimes centuries, but never like this. And then comes the blackout. From October 8th to October 18th, the sun's glare blinds our telescopes, creating a window where neither SWAN nor Atlas can be directly observed. The result? Their closest approach to the sun, and to each other, happens at the exact moment when Earth's instruments are unable to see. To many, this looks less like coincidence and more like coordination, as if their paths were deliberately engineered to meet under the cover of solar interference. Think about that. 2 anomalies arriving together, timing their rendezvous to the one place and time we cannot watch. In orbital dynamics, astronomers call this a corridor, a narrow window of space and time where 2 objects align in a way that defies randomness. And this corridor, whether by chance or by design, has forced the scientific community to confront a possibility it has long avoided. What if they are not just passing through, but converging for a purpose? While orbital mechanics raise questions, the energy data raises alarms. Atlas has already shocked researchers with bursts of acceleration that mimic thruster-like maneuvers, each pulse requiring the output of 10 nuclear power plants to explain. But SWAN makes even that look trivial because its implied energy levels are on the order of 10,000 gigawatts, more than the entire power grid of Earth. No natural comet nucleus can produce such raw output. Its reflective metals, its persistent halo, and its rhythmic pulses suggest not outgassing but control, like a machine using plasma bursts to steer itself. The idea of engineered propulsion, once dismissed as science fiction, is now quietly circulating among astronomers who can no longer ignore the numbers. And then there's the timing of the pulses themselves, regular enough to resemble a signal, patterned enough to hint at communication, and so consistent that some are calling SWAN not a fortress, but a beacon. If Atlas is a drone, maneuvering and adjusting, then SWAN might be the mothership, a colossal structure designed to survive millennia in space, arriving now not by chance but by cycle. With an orbital period of more than 22,000 years, SWAN could have passed this way long before recorded history, maybe even during the last ice age, leaving traces that our ancestors might have remembered as myths, carvings, or warnings. And now it is back, aligned once more with another anomaly, as if to remind us that we are not the only intelligence shaping the sky. Just when the world's curiosity reached its peak, silence descended. NASA, ESA, and other agencies quietly restricted data releases, suspending high-resolution imaging and radar tracking during the very days when the two objects would be closest to the Sun. Officially, this was explained as solar conjunction downtime, a standard safety measure. But behind the scenes, leaks revealed that orders were explicit: avoid public statements, deny requests for raw data, and reroute proposals for alternative observations. The blackout wasn't just natural, it was enforced. And yet, the silence of institutions only amplified the voices of independent astronomers, who rallied across forums and private networks to keep their telescopes pointed at the sky. Groups like the Ibero Tracker Collective in Spain and Bill Gray's Distributed Telescope Network began sharing data, desperate to capture even fragments of information that governments refused to release. This grassroots resistance has fueled speculation that something extraordinary is happening behind the curtain, something agencies do not want the public to see. Because if SWAN and Atlas are converging for a purpose, then the real question isn't just what they are, but why they're here now. And if their meeting was engineered, then humanity has already stumbled into the middle of a mission we were never meant to witness. As telescopes tracked 3I Atlas, something unusual emerged. Its tail wasn't just glowing, it was changing in a way that seemed deliberate. Over a span of weeks, 3 sudden accelerations were recorded, each one sharp and unexpected, spaced almost like clockwork, and each coinciding with a strange color shift in the tail. One moment, the glow would tilt red; the next, it would shift to neutral, then snap back again, as if an unseen mechanism was adjusting its propulsion. Natural outgassing from comets happens gradually, driven by the sun's heat. But what Atlas displayed was abrupt, rhythmic, and controlled. Energy estimates suggested the power required for each thrust was equivalent to 10 nuclear plants working at full capacity. For a chunk of ice and dust, that should have been impossible. For a machine, it would make sense. Meanwhile, SWAN's massive structure mirrored this behavior at an even larger scale. Its gigantic tail wasn't chaotic, but pulsed with microbursts that nudged it subtly, like course corrections made with precision. Both objects, one small and agile, the other vast and unstoppable, seemed to be maneuvering within the solar system not as wanderers but as participants in a plan. And the chilling part was this: their thrusts weren't random. They appeared synchronized. Orbital dynamics are the one thing astronomers trust to reveal truth. But here, the truth is unsettling. SWAN and Atlas, though arriving from completely different directions in the galaxy, lined up to occupy the same narrow corridor of space and time. Their perihelion points, those closest brushes with the Sun, ended up only 50 million kilometers apart, a distance smaller than the gap between Earth and Mars. Their timings? Within 3 days. And all of this unfolding during the exact solar blackout window when Earth-based telescopes were blinded by glare. For comet watchers used to centuries of data, this is unprecedented. Normally, interstellar visitors appear sporadically, sometimes decades apart, their orbits scattered across time and space. But here, we have two anomalies intersecting the same corridor in synchrony, as if both were guided by a schedule, a clock ticking on a scale beyond human comprehension. It's as though the sun isn't just a gravitational center, but a rendezvous point, a meeting hub for missions we're only beginning to notice. When chance breaks down, design rises as the only explanation left on the table. And now, even the most cautious voices in astronomy admit, this looks engineered. When scientists compared the energy outputs of the two objects, disbelief turned into dread. Atlas, with its sudden thrusts, radiated bursts equal to 10 gigawatts, enough to power major cities. But SWAN? Its sustained luminosity implied an energy output of 10,000 gigawatts, more than the entire Earth generates. That scale of energy cannot be reconciled with natural processes. Comets sublimate ice, asteroids reflect sunlight, but nothing sustains such stable, immense power without collapsing. Theories began to swirl. Was SWAN harvesting solar energy, using the sun itself as a colossal recharge station? Was its enormous metallic hull designed to capture radiation and convert it into propulsion? Some fringe researchers even argued it wasn't a comet at all, but a fortress-like construct, its vast glowing tail a byproduct of plasma shielding. The most haunting possibility? That its energy wasn't for travel at all, but for communication. A beacon, broadcasting not to Earth, but to somewhere far beyond, its pulsing emissions carrying data across the void. If that's true, then SWAN isn't just visiting, it's reporting. And we are not the intended audience. As both objects closed in on perihelion, the institutions we rely on for truth began to fall silent. NASA, ESA, and ISRO all curtailed updates, restricted live data, and denied requests for Webb's raw observations. Information that was once public suddenly became classified. When pressed, officials cited internal review and conjunction downtime, but behind closed doors, astronomers whispered of explicit orders to remain quiet. FO1A requests returned heavily redacted documents, and leaks from observatory staff suggested researchers had been reassigned, teams dissolved, and telescope feeds restricted. This wasn't the normal hush of cautious science, it was a blackout of intent. At the same time, independent astronomers filled the void, rallying networks of backyard telescopes, repurposed satellites, and encrypted data channels to track what governments refused to share. The more silence from the top, the louder the whispers grew. Something extraordinary was happening, something so paradigm-shifting that silence had become a form of control. Because when discoveries threaten not just science but power, the truth is never denied. It is hidden. And in this case, that silence may be the most terrifying evidence of all. As SWAN and Atlas advanced toward their closest approach, scientists began revisiting ancient records, not because they were desperate, but because the orbital period of SWAN suggested something staggering. Every 22,554 years, this object would return, which meant its last appearance lined up almost perfectly with the end of the last ice age. Archaeological sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey suddenly gained new relevance, because among its ancient stone carvings are depictions of celestial events, spirals, and symbols that some researchers believe could represent long-period comets blazing across prehistoric skies. Imagine humanity's earliest civilizations watching a glowing fortress the size of a small world dominate the heavens, leaving impressions so powerful they became myth, etched into stone for generations. Could it be that SWAN was here before, witnessed by ancient eyes, its arrival recorded as warnings, prophecies, or religious iconography? If this cycle has been repeating since before human memory, then perhaps what we are seeing now is not just astronomy, but the return of something our ancestors once feared enough to immortalize. Behind the polished press releases and cautious scientific statements, there were quiet operations unfolding in the shadows. Sources whispered of a classified probe launched from a covert orbital platform, a mission designed to test the true nature of SWAN. The probe was armed with advanced particle scanners, built to pierce through the blinding tail and capture high-resolution structural data. It never made it. Just over 1 million kilometers from the target, its signal was abruptly cut. For a moment, analysts believed it was a system fault, but then came the final image, a reflection, a fractal echo of the probe itself, as if SWAN had scanned it back in perfect mimicry. Moments later, the feed collapsed into silence. Engineers analyzing the data called it an energy wall, a lattice-like field similar to a Faraday cage, designed not only to shield but to repel intrusions. If this is true, then SWAN isn't just passing through. It is defended, actively monitoring and countering anything that gets too close. The implications are chilling. Not only is it enormous, it is aware. Spectroscopic data from Webb added yet another layer of mystery. Instead of the usual mix of ice, dust, and silicates expected from comets, SWAN's spectrum revealed traces of complex organic molecules, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, so refined and structured that some scientists argued they looked engineered. These are the building blocks of life, precursors to amino acids, the very seeds from which biology can emerge. Unlike messy, chaotic mixes found in primitive comets, SWAN's organics were pure, aligned, almost too perfect. Some began theorizing that SWAN might not simply be a machine, but a carrier, a seed ship designed to transport and perhaps distribute life across star systems. If Atlas was a drone, agile and active, and SWAN a fortress, massive and shielded, then together they could represent different stages of a far older mission: observation, protection, and perhaps colonization. And if that's true, then Earth's position in this story may not be incidental. We may be the next step in a plan that predates us by tens of thousands of years. As the blackout window deepened, independent trackers noticed a detail that few dared to voice aloud. The trajectories of Atlas and SWAN were not just converging by coincidence. They appeared to be aligning toward the same region of space, a corridor that brought them within proximity of each other near the Sun. For natural objects, such precision would be absurd. But here, the orbital dance looked intentional, like two ships arriving at a harbor for rendezvous. Some theorists argued this could be a refueling event, the Sun acting as an energy node where both objects recharge. Others proposed it was an audit, a systems check in which Atlas delivered data collected over its passage, while SWAN served as the archive or transmitter to something farther away. The most unsettling idea, however, was that this wasn't their meeting at all, but ours. That humanity, with its instruments finally advanced enough to observe, had become part of the plan. Because if they had been passing unnoticed for millennia, then why now do they align so clearly, so visibly, and at a moment when we are capable of watching? Perhaps the true rendezvous is not between them, but between them and us. As Webb's instruments continued to focus on SWAN, scientists discovered something so unexpected that initial reports were almost buried. The object wasn't just reflecting sunlight. It was emitting radiation in a frequency band almost silent in the natural universe, somewhere between soft X-rays and gamma radiation. Natural comets and asteroids do not generate structured emissions in this range, yet SWAN pulsed with precision, as if sending coded intervals. The pulses overloaded smaller ground-based detectors, even causing temporary sensor blindness in one prototype telescope array in Australia. Some engineers described the effect as deliberate jamming, the kind of technology that could blind opposing sensors. For the first time, whispers of hostility began to emerge. This wasn't just a fortress, it might be strategic, designed to control what could or couldn't see it. If Oumuamua was silent, enigmatic, and evasive, SWAN was the opposite: loud, commanding, and disruptive, bending not only its environment but our instruments to its will. Then came the signal. Amateur satellite trackers reported a burst of energy originating from SWAN and pointing not at Earth, but at the Moon. The wave packet wasn't simple. It was layered, structured in amplitude, frequency, polarization, and harmonic tones. Linguists, mathematicians, and cryptographers scrambled to decode what looked less like language and more like executable code, an instruction set. When NASA's Deep Space Network triangulated the burst, they confirmed its destination, a specific region of the lunar surface known for its dense mascons, gravitational anomalies beneath the crust. For decades, these sites were mysteries, unusually heavy concentrations of mass that no geological theory fully explained. Now the possibility was chilling. What if SWAN wasn't just observing? What if it was activating something buried beneath the moon, something dormant, waiting for the right signal? If that's true, then the moon, long thought to be Earth's silent companion, might instead be part of a system we never understood. During SWAN's approach, global monitoring stations began detecting anomalies not in the sky, but in the Earth itself. Magnetometers across continents registered synchronous pulses every 43 seconds, perfectly matching SWAN's emission cycles. Seismographs in Antarctica, South America, and Asia recorded ultra-low frequency vibrations that could not be traced to tectonic activity. Even more unsettling, entire populations of migratory animals, birds, whales, insects, shifted their navigation patterns in unison, as though responding to an invisible compass that had suddenly flipped. Earth itself seemed to be resonating, as if reminded of something it had forgotten, a memory buried deep within its crust. Scientists debated whether these were coincidences, artifacts of solar storms, or hidden links to SWAN's presence. But for those watching closely, the message was clear. This was no longer a cosmic event happening out there. It had reached us, vibrating through our planet, altering the very systems we thought were independent of the stars. By now, astronomers and theorists alike began piecing together a narrative too frightening to say aloud. What if Oumuamua, that first strange visitor in 2017, had been the lock, a silent probe sent to test whether humanity was ready, a keyhole waiting for the right trigger? And what if 3I Atlas and SWAN together represented the key, the drone and the fortress, the messenger and the guardian, one small, agile, maneuvering, collecting data, the other vast, shielded, carrying the energy and the authority to unlock something older, something bigger? Supporting this idea was a disturbing coincidence. During one of SWAN's strongest pulses, both Voyager spacecraft briefly went off protocol, transmitting bursts of data analysts have yet to decode, as though something inside them, dormant for decades, had been awakened. If this is true, then SWAN's arrival is not the beginning of a story. It's the continuation of one that started long before us, with cycles written into the fabric of space itself. And if we've just triggered the lock and key sequence, then whatever happens next was never meant to be avoided. It was inevitable. The James Webb Telescope was built to look outward, to peer into the first light of the universe and decode the story of galaxies long gone. But what it has given us instead is a reflection, one that forces us to confront the possibility that the story was never about distant stars at all. SWAN and 3I Atlas did not just stumble into our solar system like cosmic drifters. Their synchrony, their scale, their impossible maneuvers, and their silence during the blackout all point to intent. A lock and a key, a drone and a fortress. A rendezvous not meant for our eyes, and yet we have seen it anyway. That changes everything, because it means that for the first time in history, humanity may have intercepted not a random object, but a mission, a sequence, a cycle older than civilization itself, time to return when we had finally built the instruments capable of noticing. And if that's true, then the terrifying truth is this: we were never the observers. We were the observed. SWAN's pulses through Earth's magnetic field, its coded transmissions to the moon, its resonances that ripple through animals and fault lines, all suggest that our planet has been part of this story far longer than we realized. The fortress is not here by chance. Atlas is not here alone. Together they may be part of a system we do not understand, one that views Earth not as an accident, but as a node, a data point, maybe even a target. Whether for contact, for seeding, or for activation, the purpose remains hidden. But the silence of our agencies and the blackout imposed on our telescopes say more than any press release ever could. We wanted answers. Instead, we were handed a mirror. SWAN and Atlas are not just celestial anomalies. They are proof that we may have crossed a threshold, a point where the universe begins to respond to us. And the most terrifying part isn't that we don't understand what's happening. It's that maybe we were never supposed to. So now the question isn't whether humanity will make contact. The question is whether we already have, and whether the real signal wasn't what we received, but what we sent simply by noticing. Because sometimes the act of observation is itself the message. And now, the cosmos may finally be answering back.